Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about a very special topic, Ionic Web Intents. Ionic Web Intents is what I consider to be an advanced topic. We are going to be looking today at the implementation of Ionic Web Intents, the different things that you can do with it, calling an application from another application, opening websites, and capturing the information that you can pass from one application to the other. So let's get started with the code. The first thing that we want to do is we want to open our IDE. I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can follow up with any IDE that you have. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create a new project using the Ionic CLI to create that project. So we are gonna go Ionic start, let's name it app 1, app demo 1, and we are gonna be using Angular, so it's type Angular. We are gonna add capacitor, and we are gonna be using the blank template for this one. Okay, click enter. Now that our project has been created, just type code on the terminal, type code. Oh, we need to cd into it first. So cd into cd app demo 1. Now we can open it with the command. Okay. So now that the project is open, let's take a look at the source code. Again, before doing anything, just open another terminal. Let's do it Ionic build to build the project. And then after that, we are gonna add the Android platform. And then after the Android platform is added, we can start working with our project. The other thing that I want to go through is the Ionic documentation. Ionic documents every single API that they have. The documentation is not great, I'm telling you now, and this is the main reason that I'm doing these tutorials. One thing that you will need to understand is that when you are looking at the Ionic documentation, usually they have this GitHub repository. So it's a really good thing to go and look to the documentation as well. Sometimes it has a lot of information that can help you. If you go into the GitHub repository, you will find some example of how to implement this. Since this is a Cordova implementation wrapped in Ionic, the documentation on the plugin is not great, but it helps understand a little bit more of the capabilities of the plugin. Going back to the Ionic documentation here, let's take a look at the installation commands that we have in here. So if you are running a capacitor project like we are doing, you are going to be using the capacitor installation command. If you are doing a Cordova based application, then you just go and do the Cordova installations. But we are using capacitor, so copy paste these things in here. While that is installing, I'm just going to go back to the browser here, copy the next one. Oops. And then going back to the browser, copy the Ionic Cap Sync. So anytime that you add a plugin into your project, you will need to do an Ionic Cap Sync. That is gonna sync your Android project. Since we don't have any Android projects right now, it doesn't matter if we sync it or not. But if you have a platform project like Android or iOS, you will need to sync it unless you use the build command when you are building your Android project. So let's go back to the code and review what we have right now. So I'm just gonna sync it since I did the since I copied it. So after all of that is done, we will need, I'm gonna do something. Let's add the Android platform next. To add the Android platform, you will need to use capacitor to do it. You will do Ionic cap add Android. That is gonna add the Android support to your project, so you can build and deploy Android applications. If you want to do the same for iOS, you will use the same command, but instead of Android, you will use iOS. Now that the Android platform has been added, we can just go ahead and build the Android application and deploy to the Android. We haven't done any changes so far to the application. I just want to build it and deploy it to the device so you all can see what we are gonna get. To build your project for Android, you will need to use the command Ionic build Android. This command will build your project and it will open Android Studio. So from Android Studio, you can select your device or your emulator and deploy the application. One thing that I always do is that I like to use a physical device. Android emulators are a bit slow and require virtualization, so working with a physical device is always gonna be better. There are certain things that you need to understand while working with Android. One of those things is the level of the operating system that you're gonna be building your project. You wanna keep those settings as default right now and don't play around with those. Ionic does a very good work managing the versioning and the deployment to the devices. iOS is a little bit different, the emulator is better, but it's always a good thing to use your physical device. You can never assume that everything that you're seeing in the emulator is gonna be 100% right. For you to say that the application is done and complete, you have to test in the physical device that you are going to deploy the application. From Android Studio, let's open a new terminal. And you will need a utility to be able to mirror what you have on your physical device into your computer. The one that I use is called source copy. I call it source copy. You can use whatever you like, but this one is a very good, reliable, with good speed, and free utility that you can use to mirror the content of your device in your computer. It doesn't have to be from Android Studio. You can call this from any terminal window just by typing source SCRCPY, and it's just going to look for anything, the feed from a device. So it works with iOS or Android, and you should be able to mirror your device with this utility. One thing that I want to mention is that when you deploy your application, your Ionic application to Android, Ionic compiles the application, and the application becomes a native application that is using a web view on top of your web page. So it's exposed and behave like a native application. So in the end, it's always gonna be a native application, and you can add native plugins, custom plugins that you can create to expose a hardware functionality. You can map plugins that you have created on Java for your old Android applications. If you have functionality that you don't want to throw away and you want to continue, you can build those plugins with Capacitor, and you can still use them from Ionic. And we are going to look at that later, but right now this is just a simple application that we are going to be building just to demonstrate how you implement web intents. So going back to Visual Studio, now that we have the Android platform, we can start working with our application. So the first scenario that I want to implement is just calling a web page. So one thing that I always recommend is just going to the Ionic web page. Take a look at the documentation. Usually they have a very simple example of how you can implement this, and this is also on the code, and I'm gonna show you that later. But you can just look at the documentation and get a sense initially on how this is implemented. So let's copy this in here. So the import, going back to Android Studio, open your homepage.ts. Let's put the import in here. And now that we have import the web intent component, let's inject that in here. We don't want to have access from other places to the web intent here, so let's call it private web intent, and then it's type web intent. Now that you have that already there, let's create one function, get a browser web intent. I don't know how to write, and let's leave it there for now. Let's go back to the Ionic documentation, and let's see. This is what they do. They inject into the constructor the web intent. After that, they create a constant for the options. You can either do that, or you can just create a directly into here. You can just add that in there. It's cleaner to do it this way because you can reuse it. So at this point in time, let's create that constant in here. If you do that, it's just going to give you an error because this doesn't need to have a type, and it's not equal, like that. And then what is the error that is giving me? So this is the problem with the documentation. This options, cons option, it doesn't go outside, it go inside the implementation. So if you do it here, maybe there is another way that we can do it. I'm not going to go through that right now. But right now, let's do it like this. Web intent, get intent as the options, and what else? start activity. It's not get intent, it's a start activity, options, and then you can pass a success. You can use the then, and now you can pass what is gonna happen when it's successful and what is gonna happen when it fails. Okay, so you can do two things. You can do let's do intent. So on success is just going to give you an intent back, and you can take that and create a function. Here the only thing that I'm gonna do right now is just console log whatever we get, console.log, and just web intent was successful. And then if you got an error, then we have our callback for the error. So let's call it error. This is the error that is you are gonna get back from that promise, from that. So the start activity method is going to give you a promise back. So if the promise is good, if you get a successful call that your application can open a web intent, you will get back an intent result that have information and all those things. If you get an error, then you are gonna get an error message. So you can just go ahead and console log that error. So console.log error web intent failed. Then here let's do error just to take a look at the object message. I think that's what they send you back. I'm not so sure, but we can check. We can make it fail. So here if you go to the documentation from Ionic, they have this action in here that is just going to open an action view. And here the URL, let's put whatever URL, so http google.com like that. Yeah, okay. And then the application type, I'm not gonna use that. I'm just gonna leave it like that, and let's just go ahead. And now that we have this, there's one thing that we need to do in order for us to call it. So we want to go ahead back to the home page. Let's change this in here. Web intent demo. Web intent. I'm really bad with names, so I'll just put web intent. Google Doc browser example. Let's put browser example. And here, let's use an ion button to call that. So ion button and a browser intent. And here, let's just bind it to the let's bind a click event. If you are old school like me, that was used to be the on-click event. So now it's just click event, and you put the binding on those parentheses, and then we just go and look for the function that we created on our webpage.ts. You see that in there with IntelliSense is just get browser web intent. We are not passing any parameters, and we should be able to build this using our command Ionic cap build Android. Hit enter, and that's just going to compile our application, so we can just go back to Android Studio and deploy it and test it. Okay, so I know that was gonna happen. So one thing that I found when I was working with this is that for some reason, when you are using Ionic native components, you will need the Ionic native core installed on your project. That is not done on default. So the first time that you run it, if you don't have it, you're gonna get this error. It's a simple error to fix. Just go ahead, copy that, and do npm install, and just paste it in here. That is gonna download the Ionic core components into your project. After that, you can build it again, and then you are gonna be able to run this application. Now that we have implemented our method to call the web intent, we can go and build our application. We can go back to the Android Studio and deploy the application back into the device. And let's try it. Okay, waiting for it. Where is the application? It's here. So what's going on? I just see a blank application. So what's going on here? Let's go back to Android Studio, redeploy the application, and see the changes on the screen. So let's open the terminal again. And we get a blank application. So what is going on? If you go and open the logcat, you will have here your application, and sometimes you get like the console of like everything that the device is doing. So let's take a look at the error log. So if we look at the error log, it's just having a null pointer exception. It's a null injection error. The reason for that is that we are getting a null provider for the web intent. If we go, so how we are gonna fix this? Let's go back to the Visual Studio project, and what you need to do in here is go to your app module. Here, let's import web intent the same way that we did it before, and you look for the providers and you add your web intent as a provider there. That should fix that problem. So now I'm just being a little bit picky here so we can read this a little bit better. Let's just go here, build it again, and redeploy to the device so we can see the changes. So after this, that should fix the issue. And just remember, anytime that you are adding a component to your application, you will need to go into your add module and add it as a module added as a provider. Okay, it's just depending on what you are importing. If you are importing a provider, you will need to add it as a provider. If you are adding a module like this, like the app routing module that is already imported for you, then you need to add it as a module under the imports. Okay, so let's go back to Android Studio, redeploy, and let's see what happened. Now we get our button, very simple, a web, and if we just click it, we were gonna get the web intent. Just opening a browser window. Hey, Carlos from the future here, and I just wanna pause the video here. I've been taking a lot of time editing this video. I shoot the video in one day, but I've been putting this off for a while. I don't like the quality of the video. I'm making some changes, but I actually want to get over this hump right now. So I'm just going to release the video like it is at this moment. And there is one scenario right now, and there is other two scenarios that are more complex that I already have the footage for it, and I'm gonna be releasing them later. But since the video has taken so long, I wanted to release it right now. There is like 28 minutes on this video, and I think it's just too long. So I just gonna cut my losses now and just make sure that if you have any questions about this topic, feel free to comment on the just put a comment below, and I will do my best to answer your questions and make sure that in the next videos I'm a little bit more entertaining and I can take a little bit of a different spin on development, because when I was actually looking at the video and I was going through it, I was like, I don't think software development is that boring, actually. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I'm that boring as well. So I really want to do something different for my software development classes. I want you to enjoy this. I want to be a little bit more entertaining. So I'm just trying to think of the different things that I can do. And I have a couple of ideas. It's just going to take me a little bit of a time for me to start getting a little bit more quality in my videos and all of that. But if you have seen this video up to now, I'm just want to thank you for keeping here with me. I'm gonna be releasing the other two scenarios next, so keep in tune for more videos in Ionic, software development, mobility, IoT, and all of that I want to cover. So that's it for me for today. Thank you, and God bless you.